So here we start chapter 25. And so our focus here shifts a little bit. So chapter 25 and then the following chapter, chapter 26, are the last kind of two microeconomic chapters. Right? After this, we're going to shift gears and dive into macroeconomics. So chapters 25 and 26, our focus shifts to looking at companies and how they get resources. That is, how they acquire goods, how they hire people, how they get machines. That's primarily our focus here in chapter 25. And so all of that we just kind of call the resource market. So again, our focus is on companies and how the companies get the resources they need to produce goods and services. So that's basically what we're doing here in chapter 25, and that's our primary focus, okay? So again, this is chapter 25 in the textbook, and what we're going to do is go through, as I mentioned, the resource market. We're going to talk about how demand for resources can change, i.e. the demand curve for resources will shift, okay? And then we'll start to go into some definitions having to do with productivity. Okay, we're going to talk about marginal product, we're going to talk about total revenue, we're going to talk about marginal revenue product, value marginal product, all these kind of terms, definitions that have to do with companies and what they produce and how much money they make. Okay, and then at the end of the chapter, we'll come back to thinking about resource markets both in the short run and the long run, right? Because a lot of times it takes time for businesses to produce goods and services, and so if the demand for a particular good changes, it's going to take time for companies to get the resources, to shift gears, and to make the goods and services we need, especially in agriculture, where the time horizon might be really long, right? If there's a change in demand for, say, citrus, and if farmers are going to plant new trees, it takes somewhere close to 5 to 10 years for those trees to produce oranges. So a lot of times it takes time for markets to adjust to changing conditions. And so that's what we'll look at the end of chapter 25. Okay. But for now, kind of in this intro part of the video, let's go through some definitions first before we dive into factors that will change demand for resources. Okay. So now, as you probably figured out by now, economists are very unimaginative and we are terrible at naming things. So, what do we call the market where households buy goods and services? Well, you guessed it, we call it the goods and services market. That's it. The goods and services market. Okay. And not surprisingly, what do we call the market where businesses buy resources to make those goods and services? Yep, you guessed it. We call it the resource market. Okay, so we are incredibly unimaginative. So, again, we'll talk a bit more about the goods and services market when we get to chapter 7. But the resource market is our focus here. That is where businesses buy the resources they need to make goods and services. Okay. Now, on a market economy, who owns the resources? We do. People do, right? So individual people own the resources in a market economy. Okay. All right, so let's go through some definitions. Now, some of these definitions should probably be familiar to you, okay? So when we're talking about non-human resources, what we really mean are all those resources companies acquire. Okay. I am botching my spelling of acquire. Okay, I think resources companies acquire to produce goods. Okay, so it's everything except workers, right? So this is going to be things like natural resources, capital, and a lot of times when we're talking about capital, we're talking about machines, right? Computers, etc., right? So that leaves human resources. This is workers, people, right? These are workers. And a lot of times we think about workers in kind of two categories. Unskilled workers and skilled workers. Okay. Now, unskilled workers, these are basically people who don't really need a lot of skills to fill positions. Skilled workers, this is where they do need those, right? So skilled workers are going to be people like accountants, people in finance, marketing, lawyers, right? These are positions that take skills, and a lot of times these are people who have advanced degrees. Right? So again, all of you in this class are getting a college degree, getting higher education so that you can be a skilled worker, right? So unskilled workers are basically workers that haven't really attained skills. Now, not all skills are through college, right? If you're in the working world, you know that most of the skills you actually learn and use in the working world, you learned in the working world, right? So unskilled workers are basically people who haven't gained valuable skills. Okay. So again, a lot of times it is through college, but again, a lot of stuff you're going to learn in the working world will count as those skills that you need. Okay. Okay. Human capital. Right? Now, what do we mean by human capital? Well, this is basically the knowledge and skills that workers have. Okay. So, and again, as I mentioned, a lot of times we get the skill through education. But it could also be education and learning on the job. Learning on the job. So this is knowledge that helps you do your job better. So yes, it could be programming skills and auditing skills and mathematical skills that you're going to use in finance, right? But it could also be even more simple skills. Think about the knowledge and skill that someone who makes coffee has, right? A barista, right? The knowledge to know how to kind of make that perfect cappuccino or latte or whatever drink, right? That too would kind of count as human capital. It's the knowledge that's in our head to use equipment and resources to make the stuff that we buy, right? So that's what we mean by human capital, okay? And our last definition here, let's just switch colors, is what we call derived demand. So we're going to jump to demand for resources in the next video. But when we say derived demand, what we mean is that the demand for resources is derived from our demand for goods and services. Our demand for goods and services. Okay. So the reason why we need to, maybe get corn seeds or something like that is because someone wants to buy a bag of popcorn, right? Or someone wants to buy an ear of corn, right? Our demand to buy things in the grocery store means that producers and farmers, right, need to get the resources so they can grow the corn, right? So our demand in the resource market is derived from our demand for goods and services in the goods and services market.